project have you been doing?
I've been working with the London beekeepers about really some projects to promote more forage in the capital, because we've got lots of bees now. Bees are becoming a very popular sort of accessory for people to have in the garden because everybody's worried about the decline of bees. And the London beekeepers then said, well, why don't you go and speak to Karin Alton at the University of Sussex?
How long was the film company with you?
They were actually with me for about 2 hours, 3 hours, and they filmed over and over and over again. I mean, I had to say the same thing about 3 times where they had the camera at different angles, and then we moved around, and then they took a different shot. So yeah, and then they sort of edit it all together and clip it so it sounds more or less as if I'm speaking in one go, but actually they cut things out that I had said, and then they included other things. So yeah, no, it was interesting to see the outcome after having spent 2 hours with them. And I mean, really, it was only probably about a few minutes screening, wasn't it, on the telly, the final product.
How can we help bees at school?
You know, how we can sort of rally councils, and how we can get schools involved, and how we can, as gardeners, how we can provide many more plants for the bees to forage on. And they cut a lot of that out, which was a real shame. I also spoke a lot about what sort of work that we do in the lab at Sussex, and they didn't really include that either. So, you know, but I suppose they took from it what they wanted, and that's generally what they do, I think.
Why interested doing bees in the first place?
I did a beekeeping course with our local beekeeping association, and I just was fascinated because they are just amazing creatures. And I got in touch with the professor who had just started. He was at Sheffield University, and he'd moved down and started up a bee lab at Sussex University. So I got in touch with him and I said, you know, I'm really keen to come and work with bees. I think they're just the most amazing creatures. And he said, yes, that's fine. And we sort of had lots of talk about what we could do and what have you, and what projects that were going. And yes, and so I joined. And I've been there for 4 years now.
Bee in Karin.
You know, we all know that there are problems out there, and a lot of it is to do with the lack of forage, but there are other problems such as diseases, which are really taking their toll on our populations of honeybees, and also actually other bees as well.
What does forage mean?
Well, it could be any food that animals go and hunt for, shall we say, or fly out to find. In the case of bees, it'll be flowers, really. And they go to the flowers to find nectar, which is a sort of a sugar substance that the bees use for energy, and pollen, which is really a protein food. So basically, it's like our food and drink almost.
We live in an urban area, can we have bees here?
Urban areas are really good for bees because, you know, we are a nation of gardeners. We grow a lot of things in our gardens, and we like to see colour all the way through the season. So, you know, people might put sort of snowdrops, crocuses and things like that in the spring, and then they'll have autumn growing flowers as well, and perhaps some colour even through the sort of late winter months. So gardens are a huge resource for bees to go and find flowers. And of course, you've still got lots of parks, and trees are a phenomenal resource for bees and other insects. Although in London, we do unfortunately have a lot of trees that are called London plane, and they don't have any value for wildlife at all. So I'm trying to encourage councils not to grow as many of these as they possibly can. But they were very popular in Victorian times because they're very good at absorbing pollution in the air.
How can we help bees at school? We have big grounds.
What bees don't like is just turf that's mown. Turf is sort of your grass lawns out there. They don't like that because there's nothing there, there's no food there for them. So the best thing is to do is get lots of flowers in there, lots and lots of flowers. Especially, I mean, some of the research that we've done at the university shows that August in particular is a month where they're really struggling to find enough flowers. Because what happens is in our gardens, we generally have lots of things that flower in June, May, June, July, but then come August, a lot of the main summer flowers are nearly finished. So we need lots of food for them in August, so get planting out there, that's the best thing. If you can put fruit trees in, or you can put fruit bushes, they love that sort of thing. I mean, even things like brambles, they'll go, the flowers in the bramble, it goes in the autumn, so that gives them extra food, and they need plenty of stores to get through the winter time. Traditionally, beekeepers take the honey off the hives in August, you see, as well, so it's a really critical time for them to have food for the winter time.
How do bees survive in the winter?
Well, because it's too cold for them quite often to go out, they sort of huddle together. Now, all the summer bees have now dead and gone, and towards the end of the season, towards the end of the year, the queen will have produced special worker bees that have got an ability to stay all the way through to the following spring. And they don't actually, as such, go to sleep, but they do kind of huddle together. But as they huddle together in a sort of a ball right in the middle, they sort of eventually they will move out. So some of the bees that are on the outside will get into the warm cluster in the middle, and then they'll sort of turn place. They'll sort of change round and change places. So it's not the same bees that get cold on the outside. And if we have days that are sort of a little bit warmer, you might find them going out and they'll just go and have what's called a cleansing flight. So basically they go to toilet and then they fly back in again. Because at the moment there isn't really an awful lot of them to forage on. So this is really important because the beekeeper needs to make sure he's got plenty of food in the hive so that bees don't starve. And starvation is one of the main problems that are happening to our bees these years.
How do you know which is the queen bee?
What is the queen bee?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the queen bee, she is generally bigger than the others, and she's got a long abdomen, so her tummy is very, very big, and she's mainly an egg-laying machine. I mean, up in the summertime, she can lay anything between 1,000 and 2,000 eggs a day. So that's really all she does, and she sort of just walks around and makes sure that she's got a clean cell. These are the little holes where they lay the eggs in, and then she'll pop her head in, and she'll just make sure, check that it's nice and clean, and then she'll turn around and then she'll put her abdomen in and she'll lay an egg, and it only takes a few seconds, and then she wanders on to the next hole and pops her egg in it again. And then the workers do all the rest. They make sure that once the egg is hatched, it's got a little bit of food, and then you've got a little grub inside there, and then it starts growing, and then they will put a cap on top of it, and inside there it'll pupate and become the new worker, or a drone, which is the male bees, inside that little cell. She'll live for up to 2, maybe 3 years if she's a good queen, and there's generally only one. Sometimes you can get daughter queens coming in the springtime just before swarming, but there is generally just the one queen in a colony. But she is significantly bigger than the others.